What is up, YouTubers? Dutch in the house. Thank you very much for tuning in. And as you can tell, I am building me another quadcopter. This is a Catalyst Machine Works frame, the Shocker 5 tank, and it already has some motors on it, T-motor motors. And so the next step in a build, for me at least, would be the stack, right? Our flight stack. And you see in the title of this video is about the stack I'll be using for this build. Might be a little bit controversial, my choice of stacks in this case. A Mamba MK4, so Diatone, and that's not controversial at all. As you know, I'm a fan of Mamba stacks. They always work out for me. However, this is an F722 mini stack, so a 20 by 20 stack. And this quadcopter here, or this frame, and these motors are not a lightweight setup at all. I'll also be putting an action cam on the quadcopter. So again, a mini stack. Will that work out? We will actually see in this video. In this video I will mostly just show you the stack, right? And show you its specs and features. Tell you what I think about the stack, but in this case we'll also be flying the quadcopter to see if this mini stack can actually handle a full size, full weight 5-inch freestyle quadcopter. And I won't be holding back, so let's see if this stack holds up. Here we go.
You serious?
Alright, quick look at the box actually. Is there anything of interest over here? Well, okay, so it's a 65 amp 4-in-1 ESC. Which, yeah, that should be enough, right? But still, it's a mini stack, so we will see. 128K, so it should be a responsive 4-in-1 ESC, for sure. And the flight controller itself has black box memory, so that's always nice. F722 is definitely also nice, and okay, up to D-Shot 1200. Mounting holes. That is different from the norm, or maybe it's a new norm. Probably the new norm. The mounting holes are for 3mm bolts, whereas ordinarily or in the recent past mini stacks used 2mm bolts. This is the first Diatone stack I have in a mini size for 3mm bolts. I've had Foxier stacks in mini size that also used 3mm bolts. But okay, so we'll have a look how Diatone actually solved that puzzle. My frame, this frame, does accommodate 3mm bolts for mini stacks. So if you were considering this stack or one of the other recent stacks that use 3mm bolts, be sure to check if your frame accommodates that. Probably this stack comes with adapters from 2mm to 3mm. Speaking of, let's have a look at the box. I haven't opened it yet, so is it sealed? Huh? Having a hard time open the box. Okay, there it is. Okay, we've got some Mamba branding and blah blah blah, apps and info. Yeah, very nice. Then we've got a mounting plate. Okay. Ordinarily the entire stack would be mounted to this plate, I think, but okay, not in this case apparently. We've got a bag with grommets, an XC60, some cabling, etc, etc. Okay, these are actually 2mm bolts. That is surprising. Okay, we get anti-vibration gummies. Adapter gummies, and then we get ourselves a flight controller. Yeah, the F722 flight controller. We get the 4-in-1 ESC. Oh, very nice. We get power leads, which I will actually be using probably. We get some decals, always nice, Mamba decals. We get documentation, very nice. Also, if you ever use any kind of stack, basically Be sure to download the documentation at the time you're building the quadcopter. By the time you actually need it, when you change something on the quadcopter, it might not be available anymore, right? It might be replaced by a newer version, and yeah, then you're stuck. But yeah, okay, what is this? Oh, this is actually a leaflet with the other sticks. Okay, so this leaflet over here is documentation for the flight controller, and that's it. Yeah, basically, yeah. Okay, so yeah, 4-in-1 ESCs are a dime a dozen. Oh, but there's more documentation. So this will probably be for the 4-in-1 ESC, and it is. There you go. Very, very nice. Okay, I must admit that I am glad to see paperwork with my stack. And oh, a soldering practice board. Very nice. Yeah, they used to ship some stacks with the soldering practice board. You could order them separately, but it's nice to see they again ship it with stacks. So the thing I'm kind of like missing is 3mm bolts and also adapters. What? No adapters? Maybe let's check actually. Maybe in this bag I had expected me some 3mm bolts, stack bolts as well. Oh, they are included. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that is nice. Okay, great. So yeah, so that's actually above and beyond, right? You get 3mm stack bolts, stack mounting bolts, and 2mm bolts. Yeah, some stacks don't come with either. Some with one or the other, and yeah, this is nice to see. However, I don't really see adapters. So I was hoping for 2mm to 3mm adapters. Yeah, on the other hand, you at least get 2mm bolts and 3mm bolts. And you also get spare wire harnesses as the flight controller, whereas my flight controller already came with a wire harness. Hope that's visible. Okay, so that looks very nice. Let's have a close look at our components here. Alright, minor correction here. The way there's no real adapters for 3 or 2mm bolts. However, you get gummies in 2 sizes. I'm sure it's visible actually in the video. These are big gummies, small gummies. And basically in the smaller gummies, the walls of these gummies are a little bit thicker. And yeah, so these are for 2mm bolts and these are for 3mm bolts, solving your problems having to use any kind of adapters. No need for adapters this way. And also you get an XC60 with a stack and a capacitor, which is not uncommon, but this is an uncommonly big adapter. It's 1000 microfarad, 35 volt. And ordinarily you'd see like a 470 microfarad, so approximately half this size. It's not super duper long, but it's pretty thick. Right, hopefully you can see that. So that's nice. That's more than I was expecting. And so these are obviously the main components of the R stack. 4-in-1 ESC. It doesn't look all that special. However, you can see that it's a little bit bigger than your average mini size 4-in-1 ESC. It protrudes beyond the stack mounts, right? So yeah, part of the electronics are actually hanging off to the side beyond the stack, and the same on the other side. Other than that, there's no IR shield or heat shield. Yeah, again, we will see how this stack holds up. One of the major selling points for Mamba/Diatone stacks is always the size and accessibility of the soldering pads. If you don't solder a whole lot, a mini stack will also always be challenging because the solder pads are smaller than on a big flight controller on a bigger stack. However, as you can tell, the solder pads are nice and big in this case, at least relatively big. One of the downsides, and that's basically a downside of a small flight controller, is that not all the solder pads none of the solder pads are labeled. So you will have to revert to your documentation to see where your solder pads are at. Yeah, that's a downside. So basically Diatone had to choose between big solder pads and then not have labeling, or smaller solder pads and then maybe have some space for labeling. I prefer this. This makes it easier to work on your flight controller. By the time you're done, you don't need any labeling anyway, and you get nice documentation with this stick. So you'll actually have to decide for yourself if this is a downside for you. It makes working on your quadcopter in the field a little harder, as you, can't see what pad is what. Just so you know. Okay, other than that, nothing all that special. What I'll do is I'll actually install this stack in the quadcopter and we'll see what that looks like. Alright, not fully installed yet, but I've hooked up the motor wires, as you can tell, and the power leads and the capacitor at the front over here. And you are looking at the bottom of my quadcopter. This quadcopter is basically built upside down. It doesn't matter for the stack, obviously. And one thing I noticed is that the leads for the motor wires are a little bit smaller than what you'd expect on a full-size 4-in-1 ESC. Makes sense, probably, but these motor wires are obviously of a full-size 5-inch motor, so they are a little bit thicker, but no real issue. One upside of this is that I can actually solder and desolder the motor wires without removing the flight controller. So repairing this quadcopter in the field, replacing a motor, would be pretty possible. Easier, you wouldn't even have to remove the flight controller to do so. So that's nice. And one thing I failed to mention a minute ago is that the flight controller is what you'd call DJI ready. So over here you see the plug that goes to the 4-in-1 ESC. Over here you see a plug for your DJI setup. So that's nice, that's plug and play, and the flight controller has a USB-C connector. Yeah, should be standard these days. It's not completely. I do still see flight controllers with mini or micro USB connectors, but all appliances nowadays should have a USB-C, in my humble opinion, especially if you build a flight controller for DJI setups, right? The DJI VTXs have a USB-C connector, so yeah, that makes sense. Other than that, that's it. Obviously that plug saves you from some soldering, and the only thing I need to now solder up is a receiver. Yeah, I'll be installing a crossfire receiver on this setup. Easy peasy, obviously. And that is it. Yeah, those are the details. And for you now, instantly, for me in a couple of hours, I'll have this quadcopter ready, and let's rip it around the block. Here we go. Alrighty, and there you have it. This is genuinely my first flight, the Maiden flight with this new quadcopter. So feeling it out a little. Also, as you can tell, the weather is abysmal. Yeah, a fall winter's day here in the Netherlands. It's also cold, so my hands are freezing off. But I wanted to get this quadcopter in the air, obviously, right? Wanted to see how it did. And so this is also untuned. And you tell me in the comment section below what you think. In my humble opinion, it flies great. Yeah. So, also there were a couple of people on the field, as you could see, and also a dog. Yeah. That owner got his dog a free exercise from my drone there. I couldn't fly my drone very low because of that. In fear of hitting that dog. I wouldn't want to have that happen, of course. But lots of punch-outs and fast-paced flying. As you can tell, the quadcopter flies great. I wasn't worried at all about the stack in this flight, at all. Now, it's cold, so that helps a little bit, right? The stack won't overheat at all, but I definitely wouldn't think twice about using this stack in other 5-inch builds. So maybe I will, maybe I'll try one of the other Diatone stacks, but this is definitely one of the better stacks, I think, for 5-inch builds at this moment. If you aren't worried or scared by using a 20x20 stack for your 5-inch quadcopter. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with the stack. I'm happy with my new quadcopter, which flies great. And the last thing I want to show you is the setup I used for this quadcopter. Obviously this has nothing to do with the Diatone slash Mamba stack, but just as a bit of a background story. So the HD footage I captured with this, the DJI Action 2 camera. And apparently that camera doesn't like abysmal weather. Yeah, low light isn't its forte. Just like a GoPro wouldn't like those circumstances. I think the video you just saw actually made it look a little bit better, the weather, than it actually was. It was grayish weather. Yeah, hardly any light at all. So, okay, so the LiPo. Ordinarily I use these LiPos, the CNHL Black Labels 1100 mAh 6S. This being a slightly heavier quadcopter, however, I went with the 1300. Yeah, I'm also trying their yellow packs, the 120C LiPos. Those work out a little bit better. The weight penalty you take for the 120C, that actually is worth it. But these work out well. But this is a reasonable match. And well, in my maiden flight I used this LiPo and it got me a flight time of approximately 5 minutes. So that's nice. And this here is my FPV radio at the moment. I'm testing it and so far so good. It is the FrSky X18 Special Edition. And quite a nice radio, and I've got a crossfire module at the back, as you can tell. The only real downside I've found so far is the stick ends, not really grippy stick ends. I do think that FrSky markets this as their new FPV radio, potential FPV radio, but yeah, these are stick ends that, well, would work out well for airplane use, but these aren't FPV stick ends in my humble opinion, not grippy enough. You slide off of them too easily. Other than that, nice radio, nice color touchscreen. So yeah, and the user interface ethos works out well. I do like OpenTX and EdgeTX, but this is definitely not a bad user interface. And the radio looks nice. Gimbals are great, by the way. Excellent gimbals. So that's it. That's the setup I used for this quadcopter and well, testing this stack from Diatone slash Mamba. If you are left with questions, hit me up a comment down below. Catch you on the next video. Bye bye.